Good evening. Welcome to the Norman Transcripts Candidate Forum. My name is Caleb Slinkard. I'm the editor of the Norman Transcript. I think this is the fourth time that I've done one of these, so we'll see if it's a little bit smoother this time. I appreciate everybody who's in attendance and everybody who's at home. Obviously, our candidates who have taken time out of their busy schedules the week before the election to sit down with us and give us some of their perspectives on some questions that we have. Just a couple notes. We're going to start with Ward 1, obviously, and then go to Ward 3, Ward 7, and then the mayoral race. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes to respond to each question, and then 1 minute closing where you can just wrap up some of your thoughts. The candidates didn't get the questions ahead of time, so but they shouldn't be too surprising, hopefully. I've chosen the order at random. So, Sean, the first question is going to go to you. But before we do that, we're going to do the 2 minute opening statement. So, Sean, go ahead.
I'm Sean Williamson Jennings, and I want to represent Ward 1 on City Council. So, ignore the fact that my name is so long. My real name is LaShonda, but we had to do some cutting a little bit. I also like to tell people that my mom and my close friends call me Sean. And I chose Sean because I certainly want to continue to get to know the people who live in Ward 1. And I want to make sure that should I get elected, that the people who come to City Hall know and feel like we're friends. So I've lived and loved and laughed in Norman for the last 10 years with my husband, Michael Jennings. We've enjoyed our time here. I've not only worked and lived and laughed and loved here, but I also went to the University of Oklahoma. So I've experienced Norman through town and experienced it through gown. And I think that those are the special little somethings that I can certainly bring to City Council. So one of the other things that I wanted you all to know about me is that also I have 2 rescue dogs that I love a whole lot, and that I've spent the last 16 years working in substance abuse prevention, providing training and technical assistance, or what I call problem-solving supports, to 9 states and 5 tribes. The reason why I decided to run for public office is because I thought it was important that we bridge the communication gap. As I knocked on doors, more and more folks said, "Who's my city council member? What am I supposed to do when I talk to a city council member?" And I want to know more. And I want to bridge that communication gap that lives in Ward 1. I also realize that the data are telling us that trauma is an issue in the city that we are choosing not to address, and that we must have a trauma-informed community. And so those are the things that are most important to me. It's hearing from my neighbors. It's making sure we address trauma. It's making wealth and well-being of those.
Appreciate that. Kate, 2 minutes. Thank you.
So I can see how this is going to be difficult. We don't have a timer in front of us, so it's going to be hard to know when the time cuts out. But I'm Kate Bierman. I've served as your council member for the last 18 months. And most of you kind of know my background by now. I've got a degree in political science from American University, and then traded that life in Washington, D.C. to move here. I have lived here since 2009. My husband and I have a 13-month-old and also 2 rescue dogs and 3 cats that have chosen us as their owners. And so what you will find out about me is that I mean what I say and I say what I mean. And so when I say that I'm transparent, I post my donor list and my campaign expenditures on my website for everyone to see, because I've got nothing to hide. When I say that I'm going to do what I say, I supported a senior center and breaking the stalemate on that when I ran in 2017, and then took action about 4 months after I was sworn in to identify a site, and then in early 2018 to identify a funding stream that we are now finalizing completion on. And I believe in holding your council member accountable for things like that. And so that also means that I'm going to put detail to my policy positions. And you'll also see that on my website, is that that's the way to hold your council member accountable, is that when they say they're going to do something, they should put detail behind it. So that way, when they do or don't do it, you will be able to hold them accountable. So I'm looking forward to hearing the questions tonight, and I look forward to answering some questions of me afterwards, just like I did before this meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Question 1 goes to Sean first, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer it. What is the most significant issue in Ward 1, and how do you plan to solve it?
That question. So I think the most significant issue, and I'm going to kind of make it a two-parter, in Ward 1 and really in the city of Norman is trauma. So we do great in terms of addressing health. So we are one of the healthiest cities in the entire state. Where we lag on all data is in mental health. We have people who spend 4 more days away from work because they are chronically depressed, because they're struggling with trauma that they've experienced as children or experienced as adults. And I think that we as a city have a responsibility to take a trauma-informed approach. And a trauma-informed approach is quite cost-effective for the city. So it means that we are putting together a trauma-informed community coalition. I mean, there are people who are already working to address this issue, like folks like at CCFI and other nonprofits, like that from Food and Shelter for Friends. They are also addressing trauma. We also know that the city staff members are provided development dollars. And so why not make sure that our city staff members also can address trauma, because they've been provided the training to do so. Now, one of the other issues that we need to address is obviously housing on Ward 1, as well as transportation. And those two things go hand in hand. And I think that it's important that we strongly address our issue with cart services, that we also make sure that we start to infill some of those areas so that we can have more denser inside city areas and we don't sprawl into our green space. And so those are the things that I think that we should be addressing. We should first start with trauma, because people are always first. People will come before money, because money will come if we get healthy people. That's important.
Thank you, Sean. The same question to Kate. What is the most significant issue in Ward 1 and how do you plan to solve it?
So the most important issue facing Ward 1 right now is, in fact, transportation. While we are currently underserved in terms of mental health services, if you can't get to those services, they're not going to serve you very well. And that was, again, something that I recognized when I first decided to run for Ward 1, is that cart stops end between 12th and 24th on the east side. We don't have a cart stop at our new East Side Library. There are parts of Ward 1 where you have to walk more than a mile to get to the nearest cart stop, and I know that because I did it. I went to the middle of one of the densest neighborhoods in my ward and walked to the nearest cart stop, and it was 1.2 miles and it was uphill. And I am young, able-bodied. I wasn't carrying my child and I wasn't carrying an armload of groceries. And so this cart transition, taking over the cart service from OU, does provide us an excellent opportunity to re-envision who our cart service is intended to serve and where those bus stops need to be located. And so in the end, if we can't get to the services that we need to get to in Norman or beyond, then we are not serving the population the way we need to be serving them.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. This question 2 goes to Kate first. In our voter guide, we asked a question about incentivizing, expanding our sales tax base. And both of you kind of had some thoughts about how to improve new business growth and housing growth. What's your plan specifically to help improve our sales tax base here in Norman?
So what we need to do as a city is be the best city that we can be and the most attractive city that we can be in order to draw more people and more businesses to Norman. And we do that by having a public transportation system that serves everyone that it needs to serve, by having quality schools, by having a wide range of housing options. And in terms of business development, I recently opened a business in Norman, and I know how difficult it is and how many hurdles are thrown into the permitting and licensing process. And so I want to see that be more easy to navigate, particularly for someone who's new to business ownership. It is very, very difficult to navigate the system that we have set up in terms of starting a new business. And we need to look at that carefully and make sure that we are not making it unduly difficult for a new business owner to come to Norman and open a business. It also means that we need to be focused on family-friendly initiatives that make Norman a place that you want to raise your family. One of the things that we're hopefully going to be approving next Tuesday is a diaper changing ordinance to require diaper changing stations in both the men's and the women's room in new construction. Because I don't know how we can claim to be family-friendly and how we can claim to be inclusive if we don't have the facilities for both men and women, regardless of your physical capabilities, to be able to change your child in a safe environment without having to make them go back to their vehicle. And so we have it takes a wide approach, but I don't necessarily believe that that tax incentive programs or things of that nature are what really is going to drive businesses to Norman. All that does is make us compete with other communities. What we need to do is focus on making Norman the best city that we can in order to raise a family, to locate your business here, and that's what's going to make Norman rise above the rest.
Sean, the same question. How do you plan to help grow Norman's sales tax base?
Things that my mom used to always tell me is to get a friend, you need to be a friend. Here in Norman, we need to be business friendly. As Kate says, that it's difficult to navigate the business world that we have here. And I certainly want folks to be a friend to the east side of Norman. I would have loved for Kate to have expanded her business into the east side, to have spent that time that she says that she believes in the east side and believes in businesses on our side, that she truly would have given us a chance, because I think that we deserve it. Certainly, we also know that the sales tax base is the heart of what we have that's keeping our city afloat. And so I do think that we should incentivize, not a TIF, before anybody gets it confused. I too have a TIF with the TIF. But we certainly need to encourage and promote folks who to come to this city. We need to encourage and promote this town. We certainly also need to make sure that it is easier for businesses to be a part of it. So things like the excise tax is something that we have that's particular to Norman. So what can we do for those who choose to fill in pre-existing structures? We can incentivize. We can provide discounts and rebates to support businesses coming to Norman, because certainly businesses also bring jobs, and we cannot improve our sales tax base if there are no jobs. So that's what I plan to do.
Thank you, Sean. Question 3, our final question for Ward 1 candidates, goes to Sean first. The city of Norman is currently searching for a new city manager and city attorney. Both are two very important staff positions within the city of Norman. How do you plan to include Norman residents in their feedback in these searches?
So, I'm a person who says people first. I believe that local people solve local problems best. So we don't know all that happened to our city attorney and our city manager, but we do know that we lost $720,000 that could have gone to roads, that could have created repairs in the city. So we do know that. But whoever we get next, you know what I want them to do? I want them to be a systems thinker. I want them to be able to look at the interconnectedness of our city and be able to say, if we have a problem with transportation, we have a problem with housing. If we have a problem with this, we have a problem with that. And so that's important to me. I also want them to monitor the budget. I also want them to outreach to the people, because we have a city manager that is powerful in the city, right? And so it is important that they speak to us, that they connect with us, and that we connect with them, because this is our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Question 3 to Kate. How do you plan to include Norman residents in their feedback in the city manager and city attorney search?
So I think it's important to first point out that part of the reason why we're here in this position needing to fill these staff roles is because of the feedback that we received from Norman residents. Because the permitting and licensing process has been talked about as being difficult to navigate, because there seems to have been a disconnect between some of our top city leadership and the residents that they serve. So when we're looking for a new city manager, we need them to be looking at what other communities have done and what other communities are facing so that we can address some of these issues proactively in Norman instead of being reactionary. Examples, because I'm all about policy details and not just top line thinking, is e-scooters and Airbnb, issues that other communities faced long before they came to Norman. And these are issues that we're now struggling to deal with because we didn't address them before they came to our city. And so I've already been receiving a lot of feedback from different Norman residents about what they'd like to see in a city manager, or frankly, some are even just pointing me to cities and saying, get that guy. And I have to tell them, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But we have a firm that is very well regarded in this field, is a national search firm, and is going to bring to the city council, who is the representative of the people, to make that final decision. And so I'd say that Norman residents, they actually have feedback and input throughout this whole process, because that's who your council member is. They're supposed to be your voice. And so as we continue through this search, I know that Norman residents will continue to provide us feedback, and we will utilize that feedback to find a city manager who is proactive, who is more visionary, who can help us address some of the structural budget issues that we have by taking a comprehensive approach to what needs to be done to fill those budget gaps and make sure we don't fall into some of these same issues in the future.
Thank you, Kate. So finally, closing statement. I know that probably felt like 2 minutes up there, but appreciate your time as always. Kate, we'll go ahead and start with you. 1 minute to close.
And you guys, you all know me fairly well. You've seen the results of the things that I've done while on city council. And I just go back to being approachable, being transparent in everything that I do, right down to my donor lists and reaching out to residents in any way that they need, whether it's through knocking on their doors, holding virtual town halls. I've fielded 25 text messages over the last couple days while door knocking, because every single person who gets a visit from me gets my phone number, my cell phone number, so that you can call or text me anytime. And so that's what I come down to when I say that I mean what I say, and I say what I mean is that when I say that I'm going to be approachable, that means reaching out to people in the method that they prefer. It means being transparent, and when the rubber meets the road, putting forward policies that make Norman a better place to live, work, and play.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate that. Sean, 1 minute to close.
Secret is that I want Norman to be the best place to live, work, and play. And you all have heard me say this before. But my biggest call to you tonight is simply that we've said that City Hall is the people's house. And I call for you all to come home tonight. I say, come home because you will finally be heard, those who live in Ward 1. Come home because action is going to take place should I be elected. Come home because we together can build a greater Norman. I know that it's oftentimes said that the devil's in the details and the details, but if somebody already has the plan, then why do they need you to join in the conversation? And so I'm telling you, I'm open to being a part and inviting you in to your house so that we can all be a part of the plan, because we know people support that which they help create. And I'm asking you to come home.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate your time so much. Take care. If I could have the Ward 3 candidates coming up, we'll just take a couple minutes to get everybody situated. Okay, we'll go ahead and move right into Ward 3, and we're going to go ahead and start with opening statements. We're just going to start with Patrick and then kind of move down the seats there. 2 minutes for an opening statement. Patrick, you're starting.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. One thing that has struck me as this campaign has unfolded, it's my first campaign, my first time running for office, and so I didn't quite know what to expect. And something that I've noticed is that everybody has a story to tell. Every single door that I knock on, if someone answers in their pants, I ask them what they're concerned about, what their questions are. And everybody has something to say. And that's what I intend to do as a city council member, is provide people with that voice that they need to be heard. It's about being able to speak and have someone else as your surrogate, as your mouthpiece, as a way for you to communicate with the world, with the city, and with the people who run it. And that's what I want to bring to city council, is someone that can be that voice, that can speak for those who need it, those who live in marginalized or vulnerable communities within the city. Even in Ward 3, I have spoken with people who feel disenfranchised, who feel like they don't have a voice, that they haven't been represented. And that's what I want to change. I want everyone to be able to speak and be heard. And that's why I'm running for city council.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Richard, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Caleb. And thank you, everybody. I'd like to use my 2 minutes to give you a synopsis of my education and work background. I have a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in economics from Oklahoma City University and an MBA from the University of Portland. And I did my MBA work, the thesis work, on employee motivation. After my undergraduate work in college, I served in the Oklahoma Air National Guard and then spent a total of 6 years as a reservist. My work background started at AT&T in Oklahoma City, and I ultimately spent 16 years with them in various management positions in 7 different locations across the United States. I then switched industries and spent 14 years in executive level management in the computer industry in Austin, Texas, Cupertino, California, and Singapore. My assignment overseas was as Vice President of Sales and Marketing, responsible for developing joint ventures across all of Asia. After returning to the United States, I spent 2 years as a managing director of Scient in Austin, Texas, which is an internet consulting company focused on developing new startup businesses. I have spent time in volunteering with the United Way, the Lions Club, and Norman Regional Hospital. I was a founding member and served on the board of directors of the Austin Entrepreneurial Foundation. And most recently here in Norman, I have served as the chairman of the Norman Seniors Association. My wife, Connie, and I both grew up in this area, and we were gone for quite a number of years on our career, but we returned in 2006, and our son, 2 grandsons, and 2 great-grandsons live in the Oklahoma City area.
I appreciate that. Allison, 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, and I would like to thank the Norman Transcript for having us. I think you have 3 candidates here who nobody's ran for office. I have lived in Norman for 21 years. I came here for my undergraduate degree. I stayed and got my law degree in 2003 and fell in love with Norman and decided that this is where I wanted to raise my family. My husband and I married in 2005, and we have 2 children, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, both of which attend Truman and Truman Primary. I'm a business owner and in real estate, and I've also owned a brick and mortar store here in the city. We sold that a few years back, but I understand what it's like to be a business owner in this city and the challenges that you all face, and I look forward to meeting those challenges with a great resolution. The reason why I decided to run was because of the dissension that I saw in this city, and that it had pretty much hamstrung us from being able to move forward. And so I'm excited to meet those challenges together with an air of respect, and to be able to truly bring inclusive policy to this city, to where our ADA community, our LGBT community, our minority community, all of these different groups that sometimes feel disenfranchised because, quite frankly, our codes and our treatment has been disenfranchising, that we can bring you all together and everybody has a voice and a seat at the table. Quality of life in this city is very important to me. Like I said, I found Norman to be a great place to raise a family, but it isn't so much the best place yet to retire. It's not the best place to be serviced if you're an ADA disabled individual. We need to work very hard to make sure that our quality of life is meeting all of our citizens. Oh, and I am out of time. And
Thank you, Allison. The first question is going to go to Richard, and then we'll go to Allison, and then back to Patrick, and then we'll move around. Richard, question 1, what is the most significant issue in Ward 3, and how do you plan to solve it?
Well, I would say the most significant issue is growth. I hear this. I've done a lot of meet and greet meetings in homes with 20 or 25 people at a time, and I consistently hear people concerned about the way Norman is or isn't growing. And I think underlying all of the concerns that I hear is the basic idea that we don't seem to have a coherent plan, long-term plan about how to implement our growth, what kind it's going to be, where it's going to be, things like that. Now, we do have a Plan 40, a Plan Norman, designed to help us understand what we're going to do till 2040 that's in the works, and hopefully the new council can move that along rather quickly to get that completed, so we'll have a framework that all of us can sit and look at and say, this is the direction Norman wants to go in improving growth, both in business and residential, over the next 15, 20 years in that program. The second thing, of course, I hear a lot of conversation about is traffic, and I have no idea what to do about that. But that's going to be something that is consistently brought up and talked about from folks in our ward. And the best I can tell them is we're moving the intersection at Robinson Crossing 255 feet to the east, and we'll fix that. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Allison, same question. What is the most significant issue in your ward, and how do you plan on solving it?
So Ward 3 is actually very diverse, and depending on who you talk to, you're going to get very different answers. So I would definitely encourage everyone to go out and visit all kinds of households. For some of the small business owners, you're going to hear small business issues. For some, it was stormwater. But guys, let me tell you, for many, I heard a lot of childcare issues, not having affordable childcare in this city. I heard food insecurity issues. And then for others, often I heard from different groups, CART. When we cut back services on CART, we impact people's lives. And we need to be making sure that the decisions made on this dais are making people's lives better, not more difficult in this city. Again, I've been to all kinds of neighborhoods, and I really hope to be a voice that people can come to, and I can sit down and listen to them and hear them out, and that we can come up with solutions that are workable for their lives.
Thank you. Ward 3, and how do you plan to solve it? Did you get that? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes. It really is a very difficult question, because Ward 3 isn't one size fits all. It's not homogenous enough to be able to assume that everybody needs the same thing. But one consistent theme that I heard from many individuals was property taxes, and that's something that, as a council member, we have to balance carefully, because there aren't that many ways for the city to obtain revenue. And even though it has to go to a vote of the people, it still can sneak up on us when taxes rise. And so that's something I would want to look critically at, is how our budget is impacting the residents of Ward 3, not only with current issues, but as we're projected out into future years, what we can expect to look at and how we can go about softening the impacts to individuals. And part of that is outreach. I met one man who had horrible property tax on his trailer until he went down to the county and had him change it. He just told him the new value, and they punched a few numbers and his taxes went down. And if everybody knew that they could do that, or at least had the opportunity, we'd have a lot of people in a better position here in Ward 3. And so I think that being able to communicate to everyone in the ward and reach out in a manner that lets everyone know that they're able to be heard and able to have those concerns addressed is going to best suit the problems that face Ward 3.
Thank you, Patrick. Question 2 is going to go to Allison first. In our voter's guide, you each had at least a slightly different take on how the city of Norman should invest in its future. Should the city of Norman focus on new business growth, incentivizing new business growth, and new home builds, or should it buttress its core areas like downtown and Campus Corner?
So I'm a fan of infill. I don't have a problem with people using their own capital to build their own businesses in the way that they, is consistent with our codes and that they see fit. But as far as the city deciding to take an active role, I'm a fan of infill for a few reasons. One is that when you have too much sprawl, it ends up costing us more in the long run. We have to service the roads, we have to service the pipes, we have all new hookups to these new areas. Whereas if we're staying in areas that are already developed, it's cheaper on all of us. But if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think you're asking as far as public tax dollars, how those should be spent. And I am more in favor of businesses carrying their own weight. I know that as a small business owner, the city never came to me and said, "Hey, Allison, can we give you a bunch of money to start your business?" It didn't work that way. So I think we need to be really careful on how we spend public funds.
Thank you. Patrick, same question. Do you think the city of Norman should incentivize new business growth, new home builds, or focus on its core areas like downtown Norman and Campus Corner?
I think the question kind of speaks for itself. The new developments that are going to inevitably arise around Norman as the city grows and as people want to live here, raise their families here, those are going to be in theory, best modernized, the most recent innovations in, for example, stormwater, other developments that we need to maintain our infrastructure should be present in these new developments. So our focus should be on core Norman, where we can best revitalize the areas that need it and help with the issues that remain even in our most beloved districts. We've got buildings literally collapsing on us, and we're trying to grow outward as that happens. So I think it's important for the city itself to be focused on those areas that make Norman unique. We have a very rich architectural heritage here, and I think that preserving that is going to be one of Norman's top priorities as we see more and more people start to come in as time passes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Richard, same question to you. Incentivize new business growth and home builds or focus on the core?
Well, I'd like to break your question into two parts,
okay.
Really. The first, incentivize new job growth. I think the city has been making a little bit of a mistake over the last decade or so when it's been trying to incentivize the growth of retail in Norman. In my view, that has a couple of problems with it. You're incentivizing supply growth in terms of how many retail shops are there, but you're not doing a thing about increasing demand, which will actually increase the level of sales tax that you can collect and therefore help the budget problem that we have. I think, and the other part of that is you tend to attract retail jobs. And by attracting retail jobs, you're actually getting in on the lower end of the wage scale. And that has a number of effects on different metrics in your community. So I think the city, in terms of incentives, should be spending its time and money, what it has, to incentivize the growth of jobs in manufacturing, in engineering, and attracting new companies that are to come here and companies to start up here. And that's the whole process of getting easier and better at making the city business friendly and able to attract companies. The second kind of part of your question dealt with growth. Should it be in the core or external? I think it should be based in smart growth principles with a mixed use plan, and that can be done in both areas. As someone's already commented, if you use it in infill areas, you're going to be able to do it much less expensively by using current infrastructure that you already have. However, it works quite well if you're trying to implement the 10 smart growth principles in new developments too. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Question 3, our final question for Ward 3 candidates, begins with Patrick. When city staff disagrees with what you believe is the consensus opinion from your constituents, how do you plan on mediating that disagreement?
Conversations. The relationship between the council and the staff is a complicated one. We've got a weaker council and a weaker mayor than some other cities, and so I wouldn't be able to throw my weight around quite as much as I might like to. But that open dialogue is what's important. And as we search for a new city manager, what I would like to see is someone who is able to take a look from many different perspectives and look holistically at the city, because that's what we as individual ward representatives need in someone who is non-representative in the city manager. So I would hope that my ability to communicate clearly and effectively, and my ability to listen to suggestions and advice would be valuable assets in creating a relationship with city staff that would survive any individual issue being a conflict.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard, same question to you. When there's a disagreement between city staff and your constituents, how do you plan on mediating that?
Well, one of the reasons, Caleb, that I go through my background when I get my chance to do an opening statement is because I'm attempting to highlight part of what I've done over many years in business, and that's work in all parts of the United States and in several foreign countries with all kinds of people, many of them who don't think the way I do, don't dress the way I do, often don't even speak the same language I do, have different points of view, different starting points. But I have done that for 30 plus years and successfully set agreements with people that establish businesses or something else that move forward successfully. And the way that I do that is I always try to get agreement on some principle, some objective, some starting point with somebody. And we will talk about that and try to broaden it out broader and broader into more detail. And at any time we get into a conflict situation or disagreement, I back the conversation back up to the last point we had some kind of agreement on it. And I stick with the facts. I don't get upset. I don't disparage somebody else's opinion. I just take a conversation and I'll work it down as deep as I can till we disagree. I'll bring it back up to where we agreed, and then I'll start down another path. And if you talk to somebody long enough, as sincerely as you can, stay within the parameters of what you're trying to achieve as an objective. Don't be terribly emotional about it. You can ultimately, I believe, in almost every case, reach a resolution.
You, Richard. Allison, same question to you. When there's a disagreement between city staff and your constituents, how would you mediate that?
I think this comes back around to what we've heard a bit tonight already, and that is that people feel they aren't being heard at all. And we need to make sure that our processes here at City Hall are including as many voices as we can in a healthy dialogue, in a respectful dialogue. And so I think that to start off with, I would say that I am a voice for my ward. I'm not a staff member. So I think it's important that I'm able to be there and be accessible to my ward and to be able to communicate their concerns effectively, but also make sure that they have a seat at the table. That being said, I think it's terribly important as well that advocacy is healthy. And so we have to make sure that that mediation is just that sitting down at the table and having a conversation where it might not be that both sides in mediation come out happy. They might not get 100% of what they want, but they don't feel railroaded either. So we slow down if it's controversial. We make sure that the city is making good decisions, and we make sure that everybody's being heard. And then the final thing I would say is that it's important for everybody to learn how to spend their political capital wisely. You don't go to bat on something and use it all up on something that's, not worth it. So let's make sure that we're not splitting hairs over the small stuff, so that our voices are really being heard when that time comes that we really need our capital.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. Those are the questions we have. Again, I'm sure it felt super quick up there, but I appreciate all of you for participating. We're going to have our closing statements. Those are a minute each. Allison, we'll start with you.
Am I
good?
Is it on?
Yeah, it should be good.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for having me here tonight, having us here. This has gone so fast, this campaign time and this forum especially. Again, I would like to say that there are many issues that I feel like we haven't had a chance to cover that are super important to me. I'm just going to rattle them off again like I did last time. Mental health, substance abuse services, ADA accommodations, domestic violence, housing affordability and for homeless shelters, social justice issues. I just feel like there is so many more things that we have to talk about, and I want to be able to have those conversations with you. I'm having a meet and greet Thursday night at the Interurban that's public. I would love to have anyone there that would like to come at 6:30, from 6:30 to 8:30, and I would like to hear you out. So if there are things that you have concerns with the city, Ward 3 especially, I'd really like to hear them.
Thank you, Allison. Patrick, 1 minute to close, sir.
I think a theme that's emerged tonight is building relationships with the people that we've been meeting and giving them a voice as we step up to assume the challenges of city council. And as a lifelong Norman resident, I feel that I understand the people of Norman in a way that allows me to not only listen, but intuit their needs and come up with solutions ahead of time to prevent things from becoming problems. I believe in trying to stay ahead of the issues rather than waiting until they've bitten us months or years later. I think that it's important that we use the relationships that we've built to try and create a more inclusive community, and that will also be able to, that will help us bring people together in a manner that will allow us to truly give people a voice, that will truly allow us to communicate all of Norman's issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard, 1 minute to close.
Okay, I would like to thank the Transcript, and I hope that I have represented myself well here this evening and shown an ability to deal with the issues and opportunities that face the city going forward. My wife, Connie, and I are the only staff on our campaign. We have a few close friends that are good volunteers, but anything you see, hear, or read that our campaign produced was produced by me. We don't have any consultants, writers, strategists, or anything like that. So I would like to encourage you to look closely at my background and compare it with the background of all the rest of the people on the council and all the people running for council in all the wards. I think my background is unique, and if elected to the city council, I think that particular set of skills will add a valuable asset to this team of 9 people that make up your city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you to all the candidates. We're going to go ahead and have a 5-minute break before the Ward 7 starts so people can kind of stretch. Okay, we're going to get started here in just a minute. If you could take your seats again, thank you so much. Fantastic. Again, we'll start with opening statements. 2 minutes each. We'll start with Kyle and work our way down.
Okay, thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Norman Transcript. Thank you, everyone who's shown up this evening. It's exciting to be here again, and I think this is an important part of the democratic process where you get to hear from us so that you all can make an informed decision on who you want to best represent yourself. I appreciate the 2 minutes so we can talk a little bit longer about who we are. As I have said before, I'm a lifelong Norman resident. I've been here basically my entire life. Some of the things that I like best about Norman is that, my friends, my family, everything that I need is here in Norman. So I've got my parents here. I've got my best friend from high school here, and that means a lot to me. And so part of that is also, I went to Norman High School. I went to the University of Oklahoma. I got my paramedic certificate from Oklahoma City Community College, received my master's from Southern Nazarene. I've basically worked here my entire life. Part of that has also been volunteering. I've been a member of the Red Cross board of directors. I'm currently on the YMCA board of directors. I'm also on the board of directors for my local Rotary Club. So I see a fellow Rotarian, Mr. Chappell, in the audience. And so it's good to see other people who represent the best of Norman and also give back. Some other things about myself is that I also, just part of my work history. So when we talk about city issues, I've worked as a manager at Westwood Pool. I have also worked at Norman Regional Health System as a paramedic for 15 years. Currently, I serve as the ER systems manager, so I oversee all 3 emergency departments. So one of the reasons why I decided to run is because I am very passionate about this town. I really want to see it do better. I'm planning on living here for quite a long time. After I completed the Leadership Norman program 2 years ago, I really got to see how all the different components of Norman can come together to best service this town. And I believe that my skill set, my background, my education level, and my city connections, the good relationships I've made, will be a good asset for the city council as well as the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Stephen, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, everybody watching at home, and thank you to the Norman Transcript for putting this on. Many of you already know a lot about my background, but for those of you that don't, I am a fourth-generation Norman resident. My great-grandfather, Charlie Holman, owned a shoe and saddle shop on Main Street for about 50 years before I was alive. My grandfather, Bill Holman, worked at Central State Hospital for 42 years and retired from the laundry there. My dad, Steve Holman, graduated from Norman High in 1981. He went to Lincoln Elementary School, Irving Middle School, Central Junior High, and then Norman High after that. And he also worked at Central State Hospital for quite a while I was growing up. I've been here my whole life. I love Norman. I've been on the city council now for almost 6 years. I first ran for city council 8 years ago when I was 26 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no money. And I had been watching city council meetings for several years at that point, but I'd never really gotten too involved in the elections, but I ran that time for an open seat. And I got into a runoff election, and I ended up losing by just 21 votes. So I decided to get more organized, and 2 years later, I was able to get elected by just 28 votes over my opponent at the time. So I am a kid who grew up on the east side of Norman. Like I said, I went to Kennedy Elementary School. I went to Irving Middle School. I went to Norman High School, graduated in 2004. And I think my experience is an example to all kids in Norman that you could grow up on the east side, go to the poorest elementary school, be raised by a single parent like I was, grow up in a 2-bedroom apartment, and still grow up to be serving on the city council. And if I get reelected next Tuesday, I will be the longest serving member of the city council. I will have 6 years experience, which will be 3 years longer than any other member of the current council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Kimberly, 2 minutes for your opening.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you to the Norman Transcript, and thank you to all of you for being here this evening. I am a teacher for Norman Public Schools. I'm on my 6th year of teaching. I went to college late in life, struggled for a while, trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I was also a single mom of 3 children. So I just was trying to make it. So working 3 jobs and taking college classes when I could. So eventually I did it. And I graduated from Northeastern State University in Broken Arrow. Go Riverhawks. And I have 3 children I have 5 children, 2 of which we recently adopted. And my 3 children that are grown now, one graduated from OU 2 years ago and is now a teacher in Tulsa. My son is getting ready to graduate from OU with a degree in political science. And I have a daughter that is at UCO in Edmond. And then we recently, we were foster parents, and we recently adopted our 2 foster children, and they are age 2 and 3. So we started over. And like I said, I am a teacher for Norman Public Schools. I teach 4th grade at Jefferson Elementary, where I went to kindergarten at. I'm learning. Steve been saying that his family worked at Central State. My family worked at Central State. So I'm wondering if they worked together. That's pretty amazing. And my mom recently retired from Central State. So anyway, I'm from Norman as well. Just a mom, just a teacher, never envisioned running for office. But here I am because I want to make this a more inclusive community, especially now being the mom of a disabled child that is completely deaf. So I just want to ensure that everyone is included. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. The first question is going to go to Kyle. What is the most significant issue in Ward 7, and how do you plan to solve it?
Thank you, Caleb. Before I answer that, I kind of feel left out of the Central State portion, so I want to I want to throw my part in there. I've transported patients from Central State as a paramedic, so I kind of want to include myself there. Going back to the question of Ward 7, this is something I don't even have to guess about. And one of the good things is going around and knocking doors in the almost 1,200 doors that we have knocked over the course of the past several weeks. There are certain themes that arise. One of the questions that people keep talking about is stormwater. And I think we've talked about that at the last forum. Council has been talking about this for quite some time. Several years ago, that got voted down by 70%. And this year, we're hoping, since it's going to be put on the ballot April 2nd, we're hoping to see this be successful. And so there are some flooding issues in Ward 7, a little bit in the Eagle Cliff area, but more so towards College and Lindsay. I think the transportation bond also on April 2nd will help to alleviate some of that throughout Norman. And so I think those are really good issues. But people want to know, what are we going to do about stormwater? Last time at the previous forum, I talked about my experience as a paramedic and how passionate I am about not seeing people drown anymore, not seeing our firefighters be swept away in large water currents. So stormwater is definitely one of the big issues. Another one of the issues that's been brought up, because we do have a lot of retired folks who live in my area, they've asked about the senior center. And so things didn't really happen back in 2008 as planned. Things did not happen, here with Norman Ford at the very beginning, but now it has become a hot button topic. And so my plans for that would be to move this forward. I would work, if elected, I would work with the ad hoc committee to put this, up at the, as it's already been proposed, up at the North Base area. And so I think that would be a good plan to move forward. To go back to the stormwater thing, what would I do? Even if I'm not elected, I will be out there knocking doors telling people you need to vote yes on this, because now is the time to get stormwater taken care of. Thank you.
Kyle, Stephen, same question to you. What's the biggest issue in your ward, and how do you plan to solve it?
The biggest single issue in Ward 7 is flooding. The intersection of Lindsay and Elm Street is the number 5 top flooding problem in the entire stormwater master plan. It causes flooding on several neighborhood streets adjacent to the campus, including Elm Street, College Street, and Chautauqua. This issue is thankfully been included with the transportation bond as a combined project to improve Lindsay Street itself, to add bike lanes and ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides. That is something I'm really excited to have been able to work with city staff over the last couple of years, adamant that problem needed to be in here. Initially, it was going to be in the stormwater bond, but we were actually able to combine it with a transportation project and free up space in the stormwater bond for other stormwater issues, which I think was very appropriate. Other issues that the stormwater utility will help address in Ward 7 is mostly to do with Bishop Creek, which is almost entirely in Ward 7. Many people know about the Duck Pond, but it is actually just a section of Bishop Creek, and the stormwater utility is going to go a long way to help stabilize the banks in that creek and help reduce and mitigate flooding in the future in that area. Other area issues for Ward 7, public transit. The fastest growing area of Ward 7 is southeast area, south of Highway 9. That area does not have public transit in our current system. Right now, the city council is scrambling to try to maintain the system that we have and the service that we have, but we do need to expand our service both to the northeast part of Norman and southeast part of Norman. So that's another big issue. Road safety, the intersection of Ann Brandon and Highway 77 is a thing that I get more emails about from Ward 7 residents than any other thing. And the last thing that I would mention, there's several other issues, but the last thing, voter participation and apathy. Ward 7 historically has the lowest voter turnout of any ward. And
Thank you, Stephen. Kimberly, the same question to you. What's the most significant issue and how would you solve it?
Thank you, Caleb. My issue is not just Ward 7, but more citywide, but definitely impacts Ward 7 as well because it impacts every ward. I would love to see Norman become a more inclusive community, which would mean full access to resources for everyone, promoting equal treatment and opportunities, working to eliminate all forms of discrimination, engaging all citizens in the decision-making that impacts their lives, and responding quickly to discriminating incidents. I think we all know what has been happening as of lately on the university campus, and that has just really impacted me to speak up and address this. But other than that, not that that isn't big enough, but I would also include public transportation in that because I believe public transportation helps us be a more inclusive community. It helps everyone have better quality of life. So all of that goes hand in hand. And I just want to say that February 4th is Transit Equity Day. And so the day was chosen to honor Rosa Parks on her birthday. Her act of resistance by refusing to give up her seat on the bus in 1955 was a catalyst for the civil rights movement. It affirmed that everyone has a right to public access transit. So that's very important, and that helps us have a more inclusive community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Question 2 will go to Stephen first. Obviously, a significant portion of the University of Oklahoma's Norman campus is in Ward 7, and the relationship between the city and the university appears to be strained at the moment. Obviously, how are you going to balance, and how should the city balance working with the university while making sure that OU doesn't drive decisions made here at City Hall?
It's for the Ward 7 representative especially, it takes being able to have conversations with the university, being willing to reach out. We have to remember that the University of Oklahoma is the largest employer in the city of Norman. The students at the university are a major economic driver of this city. And the university, in my opinion, needs the city of Norman to function properly. They need the city of Norman to be an attractive and educated place to live if they're going to attract quality students to come here. So I think we both need to work together. We have to work together for the betterment of Norman as a whole and for the university. And for me, it takes reaching out to student groups to make them, to help them understand that, one, they are residents of Norman and their voice is important. We need them to participate in our local elections. We need them to help inform us of what kind of jobs do we not have in Norman that would get them to want to stay here after they graduate? What type of housing options do we not have that would get them to stay here after they graduate from OU? We have some big projects coming up in the transportation bond that are near the university campus. I'm hoping that the city is going to be able to work with the University of Oklahoma on the design of those projects. I'm hoping that the university might be interested in participating in the funding of some of those projects to enhance them to make them look even nicer, to help them maybe even function better for the safety of students and pedestrians around the campus. So the Ward 7 council member has a big responsibility having pretty much the entire campus in our district, and being somebody that's willing to reach out and be proactive with the university and bringing the city and residents together.
Kimberly, the same question to you. How should the city balance working with the university while ensuring OU doesn't drive decisions at City Hall?
Thank you. I do agree with Stephen in the fact that we definitely need to be proactive. Our proximity to the university does allow us to draw in a rich talent pool. Like I said, I will have, after May, I will have 2 children that have graduated from OU. My husband graduated from OU. I did not, but that doesn't matter. So we definitely need to keep the conversations flowing. Like, we all need to have our seat at the table and have open dialogue, open minds, and figure out exactly what Stephen said, what these young adults are wanting. What do they need in order to keep them here? I have this conversation constantly with my son. He's 22. He wants to move to LA, and I mean, he's 22. So, but I do ask him often, why don't you stay here? You have a political science degree. I actually encouraged him to stay here and run for office one day. I could so see him being mayor of Norman. He just has a knack for it. But he will be in office one day. But so I have this conversation with him. What will keep you here and not want to move away? And I have this conversation with his friends, and I have the conversation with my oldest daughter that's a teacher with her friends that graduated from OU. And that's what it takes. It takes having the conversations. What is here? What is not here that you need? What would keep you here? Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Kyle, same question. How should the city council balance that relationship with the University of Oklahoma?
Caleb, thank you for the question. When we talk about balance, we're talking about, looking at the needs of the city and also looking at what are the needs of OU, because I think that we can all work towards mutual benefit as well as mutual purpose. And so, but, as other people have said, we need to be having these conversations with people. And so let's talk about what happens when the balance is not there, such as what we have right now. So let's look at 2 examples. One is looking at how much money we're spending for the area around the YMCA. So we're going to be spending about $2.5 million on that. Prior to President Gallagher coming on, they were looking at doing like $1 a year for a 30-year lease or something like that. Okay, so $30 versus 2.5 million. Okay, so that's what happens when we don't have good relationships with the University of Oklahoma. Let's take a look at something else. Let's look at the CART service. The CART service, the University of Oklahoma issued a statement to the city manager and to the city council basically saying, we're no longer going to help you out with this. So after this date, CART service, we're going to stop doing certain things. And they've had to alter that. That's what happens when we don't have a good working relationship with the University of Oklahoma. As Mr. Holman said, it is the #1 employer in Norman. Norman Regional is #2. Norman Public Schools is #3. We need to have a good working relationship and a balance with all of our city partners, and OU is one of the big ones. And so I think the way we do this is by reaching out to the key leaders, the key stakeholders within the University of Oklahoma. Do they have a seat at the table? That doesn't mean that they're making all the decisions for us. Absolutely not. But it does mean that, we recognize that they are just part of this town as well as we are. They're looking for the betterment of this town as we are. Assume their motives are correct and that they are genuine. And let's see what we can do to balance the needs of what they want versus the city, because I think at the end of the day, we can all work towards mutual purpose and mutual gain for the betterment of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Kimberly, this final question is to you first. Other communities and cities in Oklahoma appear to have a strong vision for where they're going as a community. What should Norman's vision be?
Thank you, Caleb. Norman's vision should definitely include including everyone. I know I keep saying that, but it is so important to me. And it should include improving the quality of life overall for all Norman residents, not just a select few, not just a certain community part of the community, but for all Norman residents. Norman's vision should include helping our homeless population. You know, Oklahoma City has an amazing program. They call it Curbside OKC, and it's they empower their homeless community and employ them and give them a job, and it is really helping their community take care of their homeless population. And so that should be a part of Norman's vision. All this stuff is important. Stormwater, huge issue, very, very important. Transportation, very important. But we have to be looking at our homeless population and asking ourselves, are we doing enough for them? And so that is where I would start. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Kyle, same question to you. Other communities and cities in Oklahoma appear to have a strong vision for where they're going. What should Norman's vision be?
Caleb, that's an excellent question. And I feel like that is the best question. So what is Norman's vision and who sets that vision? I think part of, if elected to city council, that is one of the things that I would want to be part of, which is setting the vision for, we as a council would set that. I mean, that's basically what the council is charged with. I mean, it's a number of things. I mean, protecting the general fund and, setting policy, but also setting the vision for what we want to be when we grow up. And so what should that be? I think we need to look at our quality of life. There are a lot of things in Norman that I would say that for those of us who've never lived really anywhere else, we take for granted. I came from the public safety community. I think we have the best public safety community in the entire state, most likely the region. I say that because the EMS is outstanding. The police department does a fantastic job. So does the Norman Fire Department. So I think that if we want to live in a city that we consider to be safe, we need to focus on public safety, okay? If we believe that our city schools are the best that they can be, we need to have a good working relationship with the Norman Public Schools, who is also going to help set this vision with us, the Norman Public School System. That's also why I said before about having a good partnership with the other stakeholders here within this town, as well as the University of Oklahoma. I believe this is a place that we want to be. And so also part of Norman's vision is, if I talk about protecting the general fund. So we need to have, short-term plans as well as long-term plans. The city runs out of money in 2 years, okay? That's not speculation. I mean, that's fact. We can take a look at the numbers. I think a lot of us would agree on that. And so what can we do in order to protect Norman's general fund? I mean, part of that is responsible fiscal planning, and part of that has to deal with getting new jobs to come into Norman, not just having more retail where we're just kind of shifting the retail around, but having new people come in here for jobs. We want this place to be a destination place for families to live, for new jobs, and that's what I think part of Norman's vision needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Stephen, same question to you. What should our vision for the city of Norman's future be?
I think part of Norman's vision should be to continue building an inclusive community, recognizing that that means we're not entirely an inclusive community yet. But what I like most about that motto is that it recognizes that and says, but we're going to always continue working and making it one of our top priorities, working to make sure that Norman is the place in this state of Oklahoma where people feel the safest, where they feel like their kids are going to get the best education, where they feel like they're getting the best quality of services, where they feel like their business is going to be the most prosperous. Those are the things that I feel like we need to be working towards. We are not there. We have a lot of people in Norman that do not feel safe, that do not feel Norman is very friendly to doing business, that might prefer putting their children in private schools and things like that. But I think Norman's vision is being like Kimberly mentioned, being an inclusive community for everybody. I'm someone that grew up here, a product of Norman Public Schools. I'm very proud of that. Norman is the type of place, at least the people before us made it the type of place that made me want to grow up here and stay here as an adult and work for a locally owned family business and to serve on the city council here. So that's what our vision needs to be, is to continue to always try to improve ourselves and improve ourselves as a community, to be more understanding of each other, to understand that we have differences. We have a lot of growth. We have a lot of new opinions in the community. and we just need to do a better job of understanding each other. And part of my role in this process is to be somebody that helps to have that conversation and to promote that activity in Norman. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to all three candidates for Ward 7 for coming up and giving us part of your time. I definitely appreciate it. I know you've been to quite a few forums, so appreciate your thought process. We're going to go ahead and finish with a 1-minute closing statement. We'll start with Kimberly and then go to Kyle and then Stephen.
Okay, thank you, Caleb. And thank you to the Norman Transcript, and thank you again to all of you for being here. This went by really fast, which is good. So again, I'm a teacher for Norman Public Schools. I absolutely love my job. I love my school district. I love our leadership. I just have all great things to say. In closing, though, I think it's important to remind everyone to please vote on Tuesday, and also that there's a very important school bond going to be on the ballot. So just please go vote for that and support our children, because they are absolutely my top priority. My children, your children, everyone's children in here, my absolute top priority. And so that's why I'm running. I wanted to run so I could give you a voice, and I could also speak up for your children and what would make this community a better community for.
Thank you, Kimberly. Kyle, 1 minute.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you, Transcript, again, for hosting this. I am here because, like I said before, I'm very passionate about this town. I have definitely benefited from a lot of what the best that Norman has to offer. I think through the school system, I think through being employed as a city employee, I think working for a healthcare system. I think all of these things are just some of the things, just small portions of what this town does really fantastic. And I would like to see that move forward. I am here because, I believe that my skill set, my background in healthcare, I believe with having business training and doing that within healthcare, and then also just the community partners that I've gotten to reach out to, whether it be through Leadership Norman or it be just through Rotary. I think it's great to see people coming together to support the best part of this town. And so, like I said, I believe that my background makes me the most qualified for being elected on February 12th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. Stephen, 1 minute to close.
Again for being here tonight. Thank you, Norman Transcript. Also, thank you, Kimberly and Kyle, for stepping up and doing this. Like I said, this is not easy to do, to step up and do this and run, especially against an incumbent. It's not easy. After 6 years, these forums have never gotten easier for me. I still get nervous before it. So thank you all. One of the things, the reason why I'm running for re-election is experience. I feel like there's a lot of big issues going on in Norman. I feel like I have the historical knowledge and experience on this city council to help us get through these big issues. I have worked with 21 different city council members over the last 6 years and 2 different mayors. Like I said, I'm from Norman. I work 3 jobs, including city council. I work for a family-owned business here in downtown Norman and for a local music venue at night, which I will be going to as soon as I leave here. So anybody that wants to talk to me further, I'll be at the door at the deli till 2 a.m. Again, thank you all so much for allowing me to do this. I love Norman, and I ask for your vote next Tuesday.
There's going to be You're up. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with our mayoral candidates. It's going to be the same format of our other races. We're going to start with a 2-minute opening statement. Bria, we'll begin with you. 2 minutes for your opening.
All right. Thank you for organizing another great forum. We may actually get out of here at 8 o'clock. I'm very impressed. But my name is Bria Clark. I currently represent Ward 6 on the Norman City Council, and I've been honored to run for your next mayor. I have a track record of positive hands-on leadership. I have over 10 years of giving back to the community in a variety of ways, everything from PTA and PTA Council to the Healthy Retail Task Force and Open Streets Norman Planning Committee, as well as Tree Board, Library Board, a wide variety of things. Now, I'm also going to point out that it's been a bit of a wild ride in the mayor's race. We are running because we love this town, and I think we all need to remain positive and focus on the issues as well as policy stances in general. And I know that we've all worked really hard. It's been a crazy 6 weeks. And so I believe I set a tone, and I believe in collaboration, and I think that's what Norman needs right now. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to be your next mayor. I'm a hard worker, and I believe in positive leadership, and I look forward to sharing more of that with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Evan, 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you to the Norman Transcript for putting this together. My name is Evan Dunn. I was born and raised here. My grandfather came here as a professor back in the 20s and helped to set up KGOU and OETA. And 15 years ago, I got a degree in international business and economics and Chinese, and lived in China for a year and a half, teaching and studying. And teaching, I think, is the most important thing that any of us can do. We have professional athletes who make millions of dollars a year. We have a football coach who just got a raise to make $6 million, but yet we can't fund our schools. We have scientists who want to take us to Mars, but yet we have kids all over, fly over America, who don't have the opportunity to take chemistry or physics or astronomy so they can have a transcendent perspective on what it means to live a full, complete human life that's rich. If they don't, what other options do they have? They're going to be caught up in fundamentalist religion. They're going to be caught up in the casino culture. They're going to be caught up in methamphetamines and all the other traps that our culture makes so easily available. What role does the mayor play in that? Well, the mayor's just one of 9 other decision makers. I've been coming to city council meetings off and on for the past 7 years. They need more of us. We need to all be coming to city council meetings. We need to all take out time out of our weeks on Tuesday nights to turn it on channel 20 to see what's going on. Whatever ward you're in, it only requires an email to reach out.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate that. Bill, you have 2 minutes for your opening, sir.
This election is drawing to a close. We are in the final week, and Bree and I have done a lot of forums together, and we filled out quite a few questionnaires, answered lots of questions. On many things, we are very similar. We both love Norman. We both think it has great potential and has many challenges that need to be addressed. We both think that our community partners are very important, and we think the university is very important. But with regard to the university, I have much public sector and private sector negotiating experience, and I will be able to bring an independent voice to our discussions with the university. Some have described our council as toxic or dramatic, but I don't see it that way. This council has actually gotten a lot accomplished. We get along, and most of our votes have been unanimous. We represent diverse areas of this city, so it's not uncommon that sometimes we're going to have disagreements. And when we diverge and have disagreements where one person may see drama, I see a council that was elected to reverse wrongs, get busy on producing results, and not be sidetracked by efforts and political capital on a $120 million private arena when our own city budget is in serious trouble. Moreover, it wasn't toxic or dramatic to say no to a rubber stamping a 25-year franchise agreement that our city staff and others on council wanted us to sign. It wasn't toxic or dramatic to say tearing down historic homes in core Norman needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. And it wasn't toxic or dramatic to put the senior center on council agendas when current leadership at City Hall refused to address a problem that's brought about public trust issues going back to 2008. And it wasn't toxic or dramatic to say no to an arena and to do the work to end the TIF, to start the process to balancing the city's budget, to building the senior center, and getting a no tax increase transportation bond on the ballot for the people. That's the work I've been doing as mayor with my fellow council members in our community, and I will continue to.
Thank you, Bill. The first question is going to go to Bria, and we'll just move down to Evan and then Bill. 2 minutes. What makes you uniquely qualified to be Norman's next mayor?
I think I touched on that. It's how we approach issues. It's how we approach relationships. It's how we approach moving forward. I do think that there has been a divisiveness on our city council, and I've said many times that if any level of government should work as a team, it's the local one. We eat at the same restaurants, we drive on the same roads, our kids go to the same school, and we should be able to work together. Lately, I feel like showmanship and partisanship has taken over what we should be doing at the local level, which is focusing on the Norman that we want and the Norman that we need. So I believe that I have strengths with interpersonal skills, with conflict management, with bringing people together, to making sure everyone feels included. I love the phrase, walk the walk, not just talk the talk. I was knocking on doors this weekend and someone said, well, you know, everyone mentions reaching out to populations that aren't included very often. And has anyone visited an African-American church? And I was like, yeah, 2 weeks ago. So it's been great to make people understand that I'm not just going to say what you want to hear. I'm going to do what needs to be done. And that is the kind of mayor that we need for Norman right now.
Thank you, Bria. Excuse me. Same question to Evan. What makes you uniquely qualified to serve as mayor of Norman?
Thank you, Caleb. I've been to different places like you all have, but I don't think there's anyone who has studied the Chinese system as intensely as I have. And I think right now we can all see that what China has been doing over the past 30, 35 years to advance and to integrate all of the lessons that America and that the West worked so hard to discover. I'm sorry, that was the timer that I was using for. I got a timer over here. Okay, good. Good teamwork for us, right? We have to learn from those who are being successful. And when we look at other communities in the country, when we look at how other communities are retrofitting suburbia, or when we look at how different school systems are approaching this process of perfecting themselves, their body and their mind, we have to be educating. And that is where my experience in studying, in reaching out, not just to different communities, to different countries, to crossing linguistic barriers. We have international students who come here from all over the world, and all they see is our pretentiousness, our wastefulness whenever we want to splash oil on our grass to make it look pretty. So our visual cortex feels like the world is okay. Meanwhile, we know that the theatrics in DC are diverting people's attention. We know that the CGI movies are diverting people's attention from the real issues, which is we're living in an emergency. It is an urgent situation for us to change our environmentalist policies, to redesign our.
Thank you, Evan.
That changes the way we live together.
Thank you, Evan. Same question to Bill. What makes you uniquely qualified to serve as mayor of Norman?
Well, I'm uniquely qualified to be the mayor of Norman because I have the experience and leadership to lead this community to a common vision to make Norman the wonderful town that we all believe it should be. I have shown that I have the ability to bring forward creative solutions, that I'm a results-oriented leader, and one of collaboration. And let me just give you some examples, because it is more about doing the work than talking the talk. For example, I worked with Councilmember Holman on medical marijuana before the state question was ever passed. I worked with Councilmember Wilson on agritourism to get the wedding venues passed that we just now implemented the first wedding venue in our community. I worked with Councilmember Castleberry on ensuring that we have a balanced budget and we begin to stop spending more money than we're bringing in. I worked with Councilmember Bierman to ensure that we have changing tables so that men and fathers like me can change their child on a changing table versus on the ground. I worked with Councilmember Carter to ensure that we have a tree ordinance that'll be on first reading next meeting on February 12th so we can protect the tree canopy. I'm also uniquely qualified because I can bring an independent voice to the conversations involving the University of Oklahoma. And I think that's something that the citizens of this community have to consider. When we have these serious issues with the University of Oklahoma forthcoming, is an employee of the university going to be in a non-conflict position to engage in those conversations when we see what's happened at the university recently with the dean and the actions and the ramifications that have come upon her? And I think that's something that people in this town need to think about. I'm also a veteran. As a veteran, I have extensive experience in working and resolving disputes and issues involving all kinds of people all around the globe. I'm a small business owner. I'm the only person running for council who's a small business owner who knows the true struggles of making payroll, ensuring you have your budget, and you're not spending more money than you're bringing in, which is what the city's been doing for way too long. I'm also a trained mediator. I know how to find common ground between people to bring them together to a successful resolution. And sometimes that looks like it's just.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Evan, question number 2 goes to you first. The UNP Entertainment District discussion demonstrated that there are some deep divides in our community. What specific actions do you intend to take to bring people in this community together?
I think what brings people together is vision that people can agree to about what it is that shapes that area, what it is that brings together the rural side of Norman with the urban intellectual side of Norman, and creating something that can give students the skills of primitive survival and the technological survival skills makes people want to come here. It makes people think that Norman is a progressive place and that they're doing what is needed to amplify the understanding and the enlightenment of the students and of the residents. With regards to the actual UNP space, I hate the idea of more spectacle. OU has one of the best gymnastics programs. We have one of the best football programs. We do not need more spectacle in this city. What we need is a way to balance out that which is lacking. And what's lacking is a commitment to an environmentalist style of branding this community. That can be done if we build a botanical gardens and we combine it with a petroleum history museum. All of that can come together to awaken people to the power of oil, to the way in which we are dependent upon some source of energy. We don't have Berge wind power. We don't have pools in our schools. We don't have the idea of a decentralized senior center in which we have aquatherapy, hydrotherapy, food forests, victory gardens. That's not in the discussion. No one lives forever. Our bodies are going to fall.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate that. Bill, same question to you, sir. What specific actions do you intend to take to bring people together?
That's a very good question, and I agree. The arena, in lots of ways, this past year has been very divisive within our community. I, for one, early on, started asking tough questions and trying to gather information, and even proposed the idea of a public forum, which some people have criticized me for. Because I think if there had been more transparency in that discussion and opportunity for a public forum, there would have been less divisiveness. So that's my part of my answer to this question. I've recently been reading the book called The Process Matters. And I agree with that. And some people that have followed me on council know that I'm a process person. And The Process Matters will tell you that by engaging people, listening, actively listening to them, and going to where they are in their communities, going to Ward 5 and out to the lake, or going to the flats in the west, or going to the grain belt in the north, or to the Canadian River in the south, like I have been doing in this campaign, and listening to people, that's how we begin to restore and rebuild public trust. Because people want to be listened to, and they want to hear and believe that you care about what they have to say. And I've been doing that during this campaign, and that would be one of the things I would continue to do until the day I'm sworn in as mayor. It would be to listen and engage with the people and let them know that I'm willing to collaborate with them to find common ground so that we can build a common community vision. And that would begin the process of restoring public trust. Because without restoring that public trust, we're not going to begin to heal the divides, and we're not going to be able to move the community forward in an overall positive fashion. And so I think those are some of the most important things that the leader of our next mayor has to be able to do, is to bring people together. You have to be willing to actively listen to them, respect their opinions, engage in civil dialogue, and ensure that others are engaging in civil dialogue by showing the ability to stand up to people when necessary that are being bullies or harassing people, but rather are not listening to people, because sometimes over-aggressive behavior can silence certain people, and I do not support that.
Thank you, Bill. Bria, same question. What specific actions do you intend to take to bring people together in this city?
I think the mayor needs to set a tone and be an example. I wouldn't attack my opponent's place of business and employment, that's for sure. But I mentioned hands-on leadership. I think you need to get out and connect with the people. I think you need to go where they're at and not just say that you're accessible. I think we need to look at how we communicate. For example, the ward pages. The ward pages can be good for sharing community events and traffic updates and things like that, but I don't think it's the best spot for civil debates about community issues. And I think we need to create more opportunities for that to happen. We've shown that when we have well-organized forums, people come. And so I would like to host monthly mayoral forums, move them all around Norman, be accessible to people. I think the first half could be a helpful community topic, safe neighborhoods, how to set up a neighborhood watch, issues going on at school, volunteer opportunities, how to set up a community garden. And then the other half could be just being available and there to answer questions. We've lost the ability to connect. We've lost the ability to have disagreements and be okay with that. We've lost the ability to be civil. And when you do reach out, you have to, as Councilmember Hickman said, you do need to listen. But I think people need to understand that when you reach out, that you mean it, and that you're sincere, and that you're authentic. And I think that I bring that to the table. And that's how I'm going to bring people together. I'm going to set a tone, I'm going to set an example, and I'm going to do the work to make sure everyone in Norman feels included.
Thank you. Question 3 will go to Bill first. There's a lot going on at the city: stormwater, transportation bond, implementation of Norman Forward, et cetera, et cetera. What's your strategy for prioritizing these important projects, keeping in mind that we have limited personnel, limited resources, limited public interest? What's your priority for what is your strategy for prioritizing those projects?
Well, I think we have to work together to come up with a community vision, and that will help us to set the priorities of the work that we want our limited city staff. And I want to give a shout out to our city staff. They do work very hard, and they are undermanned. We are down staff members now as it is, and they work very hard. I tell people from a code enforcement standpoint, we have the least per capita code enforcement of any of our comparable Big 12 cities. And right now we're down staff in the planning department, the city attorney's office. So they work hard, and we have to prioritize the work that we want them to do. And so I think one of the things that we need to begin tackling as a part of restoring this public trust and building community vision is fulfilling the promises that the city has made to the people. That's school resource officers and fulfilling the PSST2 vote that the people voted on. That's building a senior center and getting it built now. That's following through and developing on our Norman Forward projects, like the Pisces project. I've heard a lot from those folks that they're concerned that the projects are behind schedule and maybe over budget. We've got to have a vision for growth. Talk to people about growth in Norman, and people love this town. People are going to move here. So how do we want our town to grow? I support smart, sustainable growth. That's why I led the collaborative effort with builders in our community and environmentalists in our community to create the first pilot project for energy efficient homes in the state of Oklahoma. And we are successfully working that program right now. And that nobody can remember in this town that I've asked the last time that we got the builders and the environmentalists together to support an ordinance to move forward in a positive way to do something that's best for our community. And I was able to successfully help broker that. So that's how we're going to have to prioritize, is by making decisions about how do we want to move forward with making our community more inclusive? How do we want to work forward in making our community more vibrant economically? How do we want to move forward and make our community the best in the state at the arts? Those are all things that are.
Thank you, Bill. Bria, the same question. What is your strategy for prioritizing all these important projects?
I think that we've got to work on the budget. I mean, time and time again, we have these great ideas and these wonderful ordinances and new position ideas, but we don't have a balanced budget. And so we can have all the ideas in the world, but if we don't have a strong economy, how are we going to support all of this? And when you live in a city or in a state, frankly, that ties its city's hands to sales tax, we have to be more mindful of that than other cities. So all of this is fantastic, but if we don't have a strong budget, if we don't have a balanced budget, if we don't have, I think, expanded sales tax, not just the retail, but again, the higher paying jobs that other candidates have talked to tonight, if we don't create job opportunities for our kids, we're not going to fulfill any of this. We're just going to be the city of dreams. And I'm all for dreaming, but I'm also a woman of action. So I'd like to see us act a bit more on that. So I think we can work on things like auditing and streamlining our inspection and permitting process. Inclusivity, of course. Infrastructure is going to be huge. I think we need to make sure our schools have everything that they need, but not just Norman Public Schools, the career technology centers as well. I think those often get overlooked. Again, we have the hardest working staff. I really do believe that. And I believe that we have to treat them with respect as well. I think that we ask a lot of them, and as lean as they are, they're overworked. So if we're going to help with finishing these projects, and the list is long, if we're going to make sure that we have ordinances we can actually do something with, then we need to do a better job with our budget and strengthening our economy.
Thank you, Bria. Evan, same question to you. What is your strategy for prioritizing these important projects?
Thanks, Caleb. That is a good question. What's the strategy for prioritizing? I think we ought to go beyond prioritizing. I think we ought to table all of them. I think we ought to put them off and rethink them. Rethink our priorities. What are we trying to turn this community into? How do we want to sell this community? How do we want to market this community for the next 50, 75, 100 years? What do you think? Does anybody have any ideas about what they'd like to see in 50, 75 years? I won't be here. I don't think I'm going to live more than 20, 25 years. Oh, we're just so petty. We're so petty and we're so superficial, and it's pathetic. It makes me sad. It makes me ashamed to be here. I'm not surprised that our young people, our graduates, want to leave. What are we doing to recruit people? I don't want to keep my graduates here. I want Norman to be so amazing and so transcendent that we dispatch them, we deploy them out into the country to teach people about Oklahoma and what it is that makes us so special. I think we ought to implement some type of national draft where we take all the professionals, the $1 million athletes, the scientists, we draft them, we bring them in to fly over Oklahoma so they can teach. Can we do that in the city? I know we've got a lot of skilled mathematicians. We've got a lot of professors who have a lot of skills, but do we bring them into our classrooms? Do we challenge them? Do we challenge each other? I don't think so. I don't think so, but time for a mayor to be assertive and to challenge us to be better.
Thank you, Evan. Question 4 will go to Bria first. We've got more than 100,000 people living in Norman. Only a relative few are engaged day to day on what's going on here at City Hall. How do you plan to engage Normanites who aren't currently engaged beyond what happens at City Hall or on Facebook?
That kind of leads into my previous answer about having mayoral forums. But I think we need to utilize email more, frankly. I've been very impressed with Norman Parks and Rec newsletter. So I asked today, how do you sign up for this? And I plan to communicate that. I think that the city manager's report, and that's something I'm going to ask for specifically when we are interviewing, that needs to go to everyone. You know, I think I was the first council member to share that. And I asked, well, can I share it? And they said, yes. And so it's like, well, why do I get to be the middleman on that? So I think we can have better forms of communication in terms of email as well as social media, but then more, again, being accessible through forums and regular ward meetings. I had noticed in that long line in November when we were waiting to vote, there were a lot of captive people there and huge voter turnout, yet low voter turnout on what I think are the elections that matter the most, at least in your everyday lives, because the decisions we make every second and fourth Tuesday will impact people far faster. And so I plan to reach out to the Cleveland County Election Board to see if we could at least have a, hey, mark your calendars now for the next local election. You know, we can do that on February 12th to make sure that they roll out on April 2nd as we vote on major infrastructure projects for our community. So I think we need to utilize all of it. We live in a special time where some people are on social media, some people aren't. Some read their hard copy transcript every morning, and some don't get the paper. And so we need to be mindful of that, because if you're not inclusive in the way you communicate, then you're not inclusive and you're leaving people out of the process. And people need to know that their city cares. So I think we need to make more efforts like that.
Thank you, Bria. Evan, same question to you. How do you plan to engage Normanites who aren't currently engaged with what's going on at City Hall?
Thanks, Caleb. How do you make people care? I think we have to put people on the defensive. I think that we need to shame people into being more efficient. We need to shame them into caring more about their community. I think we need to take action to I think we need to be in perpetual campaign mode. You know, I haven't knocked on any doors yet. I don't intend to until February 13th. That way, when people hear my knock on the door and they come to it, and I tell them what's going on, and I tell them, hey, the mayoral election just passed. Will you vote for me? And they're stupefied. I want them to be provocatively turned into activists. I want to show them with my home, the way that my home is landscaped, the way that I've implemented a food forest design. I want that to be the model. Challenging them to change the way that they live by setting the example ourselves. I think that is what makes somebody feel as though they've lost the moral high ground. And the only way for them to get that moral high ground back is to start showing up.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate that. Bill, same question to you. How do you intend to engage with Normanites who aren't engaged on a daily basis with what's going on here at City Hall?
Good question, Caleb. And I think that's a question that's probably been asked for years on end about how to get more people involved in local government. And we really should have that as a goal always and perpetually. But some things I think we can do that we're not doing. First, we have marginalized communities minorities and the working poor that are not engaged in city politics. We need to go into those communities and talk to them in their safe spaces with their leaders and encourage them to get involved and show them how they can get involved and make a way for them to be able to get involved to continue to build an inclusive community. I've talked about this before in other forums. We need to have the ability to speak the language of the largest minority group in our community, the Hispanics. For Spanish-speaking folks, they don't necessarily have a way to get a question answered about a utility bill, or maybe even to deal with an issue involving the Norman Police Department. We need to have the ability, or to read the forms that we have that they need to fill out at City Hall. We need to do a better job of being able to have Spanish-speaking and Spanish forms available for the largest minority group in our community. We need to also engage more on social media in a more active way, as opposed to council members having to share things in certain ward pages. Our communications officer could be more aggressive about social media, and I fully agree that we also should do more about emails. I would hold mayor forums and town halls across town in the different wards to give people a chance to come out and to share their ideas and thoughts, and for me to listen to them. I proposed having a small business roundtable to have an opportunity to have direct communications with our small business owners to get direct feedback from them. I've also proposed having a racial and social justice roundtable to give a forum for marginalized communities to have an opportunity to share their concerns and thoughts. There needs to be a coordinated effort with our existing boards and commissions to ensure better communications across the board. And I'm always actively involved at public events, and I think we should invite citizens to grand openings like for Norman Ford projects to ensure more people have a chance.
Thank you, Bill. This question will go to Evan first. The city of Norman relies on sales taxes to fund its budget. How would you grow Norman's sales tax base?
Yeah. How do we grow the sales tax base? We're already the city of festivals. Should we add more festivals? Should we figure out new ways to bring people into town? Should we figure out new ways to attract new business that make people want to buy more things? Maybe so. Maybe so. Should we cut taxes on businesses to make them want to come? Should we set up new TIFs? Maybe so. Since 9/11, we're a country at war, but we don't act like it. Back during World War II, they used to sell war bonds, and that was a way that the government funded its war effort. Have we even thought about integrating war bond sales to our residents, whether it's for the school bond or the transportation bond? I know I'd buy one for $50. That wouldn't even be a tax. That'd be an actual investment. Would you rather your taxes go up and the debt on your children go up, or would you rather have a vested interest in the future of your community and the services that you and your children are going to use and benefit from? When you change the way that our community is marketed, you change what brings people in. People in the country know that this is one of the worst educational states. We have to leverage that altruism to make people want to come. And when they come, they bring their dollars and they bring their skills. Oh.
Thank you, Evan. The same question to Bill. How would you grow Norman's sales tax base?
Well, good question, Caleb. And I have a 5-point plan, I would say, to do that. First, we have to bring quality jobs. People have heard me talk about this a lot. I've got 2 college-age kids that have been looking for jobs and internships, and frankly, they can't find one in Norman. My daughter in New York City had to work in Oklahoma City this summer because there were no internships and quality jobs available for her this summer. And so this is a personal thing for me, having experienced this firsthand, and I realize the deficiency we have. And there are targeted industries like weather and aviation that we could really develop as a niche markets in Norman with our relationship with the university. But we also have to protect and promote our small businesses and entrepreneurs. We have tremendous possibility here with entrepreneurs and small businesses, and we have some of the best small businesses already, but we have to protect them and grow them and let them flourish. Number 2, we have to improve the quality of life, better parks, safe routes to schools, more walkability, and invest in our arts because it is an economic driver as well. Number 3, we have to have a first-class, world-class public transit system as part of the negotiation with the university. We have to build a public transit system that will get people to their jobs and to their healthcare facilities when they need healthcare and not have to wait days. And especially for our disabled community, who I've worked very much with, who've had challenges with our public transit in the current form. And when we redo our public transit system from the university, that will be a priority for me to ensure that we have a quality public transit system for everyone. Number 4, the senior center. The seniors are our fastest growing demographic. We have to invest in our seniors by building them a world-class senior center and ensuring that we give opportunities for companies that come here that want to service our seniors. And then lastly, I support exploration of a Norman Development Authority. As a lawyer, I've worked with these kinds of development authorities in other communities like Midwest City, Oklahoma City, Yukon, and those development authorities have the opportunity to revitalize parts of a community that are already depressed and that need action to bring things together to get things done. And I think that's something that.
Thank you, Bill. Bria, same question to you. How would you grow our sales tax base?
Well, I think on top of a senior center, our seniors deserve more than just a center to hang out. I think we need more affordable housing opportunities as well. I think that will benefit all of our community in terms of giving people an opportunity to have more money to spend out in the community. Someone made a joke today about trolls and going back to play their video games, and I couldn't help but laugh because I know a lot of people who play video games, and I wouldn't necessarily call them trolls. In fact, I think that's kind of an avenue that we could look at, kind of expanding experiential sales tax dollars. I have a 6th grader who's kind of hard to shop for, so we often buy concert tickets and things like that. I hear that now that our liquor laws are updated, maybe we could get an Alamo House or something neat like that. So we need to look at those kind of opportunities. I served on the Economic Development Strategic Plan Steering Committee, so a lot of the bullet points that Councilmember Hickman mentioned are in that plan. So I'm very excited about that. Things that I also think we could work on with our legislative delegation to Oklahoma City, we need to completely close the loop with online sales tax. When we are so dependent on it, I think that is it's not an easy fix, that's for sure, but one that Oklahoma specifically needs to be mindful of. Building on that, I had a resident who works in selling digital products, and he benefits from this loophole, but he points out and recognizes we need to fix it. There's no sales tax on digital products. So when he makes a $1 million sale, where's the sales tax on that? So I think these are things that we need to be mindful of our unique character as a city and address those. There's a lot of things that we can do. I like our unique districts. I visited Ardmore recently as part of the Community Leadership Development Program with the Oklahoma Municipal League, and they are doing things like a 50-50 match grant for a facade grant to help people within a certain district invest in their buildings. I think we could do that on Main Street. I think we could do that on Lindsay Street. I think we could do that in East Norman. I think we could do that in Ed Noble, but it all comes back to the budget and making sure we have this kind of money to work with.
Thank you, Bria. And also, in order to get us out by 8, which I promised we would do, we'll go ahead and move on to closing statements. We'll start with Bill and then Bria. Bill, 1 minute for your closing statement, sir.
Well, I want to thank the Norman Transcript for hosting this forum tonight. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to the citizens of Norman, to the people. This is a wonderful chance to get a chance to answer questions and to share my vision with you. As I've mentioned, I've provided several actual examples of my collaborative efforts to work with the community as well as with fellow council members, and I think that's important. I'll just share with you one more example. In the first year I was on council was with regard to the Animal Welfare Center. We now have 2 council members on council that were a part of those efforts as well. So I was able to, as the only council member at that time, really lead the efforts to ensure that we brought forward and got more staffing and funding, working with my fellow council members to get that to be, I believe, nearly a unanimous vote. And now we have 2 more council members on council, and I'm really proud of that. I've worked hard with people to solve problems and get results. I've been only 1 vote on council, but as you can see, I've been able to get other people to work with me to get things done. And that's the mayor I will be for you. I will work with staff, council, and our community partners and the people of this community to address our challenges.
Thank you for the time this evening, and I look for your vote or questions. Thank you, Bill. Evan, 1 minute for your closing statement, sir.
Thank you. I too want to thank you, Caleb, for putting this on, the Transcript, for hosting it, and for all of you who turned out and who care. I was born and raised here. I went to Norman Public Schools. I got a degree at OU. I'm embarrassed at how my community is designed. I'm embarrassed and ashamed at how we've neglected to take a leadership role. We allow the oil in our soil to get ripped out of the ground. And what are we doing? How are we investing? Are we preparing for the future? Do we even understand the challenges that are coming in the future? We allow ourselves to stay addicted to the petty diversions. And we have to address that. We have to look and understand and help each other understand. Our churches, they send out missionaries all over the world. They propagate fundamentalism. And our national government, they don't want to challenge anybody else because that is what enables them to get votes.
Evan, thank you, sir. That was a minute, but I'm sure he'll stick around to complete that thought. Bria, 1 minute for your closing thought.
Thank you. I love this town. We wouldn't be going through this if we didn't. And I also want to take a moment again to request that everyone involved in this election, supporters, detractors, please keep a civil tone. That's a way we can get people to engage in local government, because after what's gone on this week, I don't know who would want to run for city council, and that's really sad. So please be mindful of our families, of our children. Evan, I got your back too, man. But we can do better. We can do better. We are the best town in Oklahoma, and we need to act like it. And I'm going to continue to set a tone and an example of what kind of leadership that this city needs, because strong communities deserve strong leadership, especially in times of change and when we're dealing with difficult issues. So I'm asking for your vote on February 12th if you'd like to see us move forward in a positive fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates who were here. Appreciate your time. And for everybody who attended, I appreciate you. And don't forget to vote on February 12th. Thank you all.